the United States top military admirals and generals and other military leaders revolting against Donald Trump, turning against Donald Trump, and leaking to the press just how dire of a condition the United States military is in, how the United States isn't simply in a position where its stockpiles of THAADs and Patriot interceptors are being depleted, but virtually all of our THAADs and Patriot interceptors and Navy destroyer anti-ballistic missile capabilities have been depleted and destroyed by Donald Trump. We really began to see an escalation of the leaks from top generals and admirals beginning right around July 20th. You started to see headlines like this, even in Trump-friendly rags like the New York Post. U.S. doesn't have enough missiles to protect troops in the Middle East for long-term war with Iran, say experts, and that article cites numerous top military officials who spoke with the Wall Street Journal, with the Post, and others. Then, July 21st, the Washington Post reports, "We do not have enough air defense and long-range munitions due to low supply and battle damage to safely sustain operations. And I don't think the White House is aware of that," citing top military officials. That's what the Washington Post reported then. Then we got this steady stream escalating in the past 72 hours. Dan Lamothe, a national security reporter, a Defense Department reporter at the Washington Post, reported the following about General Alexis Grinkowicz over the weekend and over the past 48 hours as well. And Grinkowicz, codename the Grinch, he's the top allied commander from the United States in Europe. He's a serious dude, probably the best respected general left in the United States after Hegseth's purge of a lot of our top military officials. And Grinkowicz, the top general NATO allied command in Europe, said the following. Well, he leaked out a written notification, rather, to senior Pentagon officials saying that without another operational Navy destroyer in Europe, he will be forced to choose defense of the United States homeland over that of Israel, knowing the wedge issue, of course, that Donald Trump got into this catastrophic and unlawful war to join Netanyahu, and making it very clear that the decision, and the American people would know this, that Donald Trump was protecting Israel over the United States. I think we all know that already. However, when you have General Grinkowicz putting that in writing, that is a big deal. Grinkowicz, also a top general, warning the Pentagon that he lacks sufficient forces to protect the United States, and that it would essentially mean protecting Israel and then leaving the United States, Asia, all the other Arab nations very, very vulnerable. We heard from Reuters. We heard from CNN. We heard from Politico. It was a tsunami of leaks taking place in the past 48 hours. You had the CNN story. The U.S. has depleted nearly 80% of its THAAD interceptors and half of its Patriot missiles and a significant number of other precision munitions during the Iran conflict. Virtually all Patriot interceptors and THAADs are depleted. We are in a dangerously low crisis situation, senior military commanders have warned. They said these stockpiles have never been this low ever. These shortages, along with concerns over Iranian retaliation and civilian casualties, pushed our generals and admirals to essentially give Donald Trump the riot act, which is, you are about to cause a situation where you will have to be forced to publicly surrender in a way that will just utterly humiliate the United States and everybody. And they proposed a way to Donald Trump to try to save face. And it's interesting to see that kind of being implemented now. So you know the way Iran has developed this psychological profile on Donald Trump. We've been covering it here on the MeidasTouch network. And I mean, they didn't need a team of psychiatrists, psychologists, and other individuals who are experts in the field of mental health to diagnose Donald Trump as psychologically ill. They view Donald Trump as severely mentally ill, as a malignant narcissist. And so they studied, how do you deal with him? And so one of the things that we've learned, and we've heard this through warnings from top generals and admirals as well, and we've also seen it and observed it, is that Iran has recognized that you actually need to escalate with Trump to de-escalate. You need to up the ante and show him that you are not going to stop. Showing any weakness at all, Donald Trump perceives as an invitation for him to strike harder. That's why over the past 48 hours, 72 hours, despite our corporate news covering it up, what have we been covering here on the MeidasTouch network? 3 tankers have been destroyed in the Strait of Hormuz by Iran while Donald Trump was out there threatening decapitation. Iran struck a U.S. base in Kuwait again. The Houthis have been striking hard in Dubai and other areas. The Iranians destroyed another MQ-9 Reaper. So that's one of the things that Iran realized. Now, our generals and admirals came up with this plan, a face-saving exercise for Donald Trump by making Donald Trump feel he did a deal because he is a little 3-year-old brat. No offense to 3-year-old brats. So our generals and admirals had this idea, Eureka! What is Donald Trump really good at? Fraud. I mean, I'm not sure he's good. He's a horrible human being, but he's a fraud and a con artist. And the other thing is stealing other people's things, stealing their music, stealing their ideas, stealing their IP, stealing their accomplishments, stealing their valor. That's what Donald Trump did. So our admirals and generals had a plan. Iran and Oman are doing the hard work. They're negotiating a deal for Iran to control the Strait of Hormuz. Eureka! Let's just tell Donald, you don't have to do anything. Look, Witkoff, Kushner, we know this is very, very difficult for you. We know all you're trying to do is your quid pro quo deals. Why don't we have Besant go? This is what our generals and admirals did. This was the plot. They executed. It's like the end of Usual Suspects, where Kaiser Sose starts to walk, or the end of Sixth Sense, where you realize when he sees dead people how it ends, right? So this was the plan. Make Donald Trump, the 3-year-old brat, feel like he did a deal. Manipulate the market, Donald, all good. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to have Iran do the deal with Oman. Iran will control the Strait of Hormuz. And then, Donald, you just take credit for it and say that you did it. Okay, Donald? We'll get you the participation trophy.
Have you ever thought, I should really be doing something to protect myself from stalkers, scammers, and hackers, but you're not sure what? Well, here's what you could do. Go to www.joindeleteme.com/Meidas and enter code Meidas and you'll get 20% off Delete Me. That's MEIDAS. Delete Me removes your personal information that's being sold online. As someone with an active online presence, privacy is really important to me. Our work puts us out in public every single day, and it's unsettling to think that your home address, phone number, or even family information could be floating around on data broker websites. That's why I like having Delete Me working behind the scenes to remove my personal information from hundreds of those sites. In the age of AI, we are all especially vulnerable to scammers using personal data that's already out there. The good news is Delete Me does the hard work for you. It was even named the top pick for data removal services by Wirecutter. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me, now at a special discount for our listeners. Get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/Meidas and use promo code Meidas at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to www.joindeleteme.com/Meidas and enter code Meidas at checkout, MEIDAS. That's www.joindeleteme.com/Meidas, code Meidas.
So that was the plan that was actually implemented. And so here's what we're learning about that. Here's the Hormuz deal that is now being discussed. Iran controls the entry into the Strait of Hormuz, and Oman controls the exit. Iran has the ability to intervene in the waterway whenever it wants, because it has sovereign control over the whole Strait of Hormuz. There will be a potential service fee and a revenue split between Iran and Oman that may have to be characterized as voluntary. How they are going to be phrasing it and framing it, they're working on that language. And Besant says, We could be announcing this deal any day. Then you had Barack Ravid over at Axios, which is Trump's personal stenographer, and they go, the U.S., Iran, and Oman are closing in on an interim agreement. Barack Ravid is back, baby. Do you see the plan? So Trump's just going to take credit for the Oman and Iran deal. And this is how our admirals and generals hatch the plan, knowing that Donald Trump is really just, he wants to say deal and he wants to manipulate the market. So that's how they implemented this plan. By the way, even the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dan Kane, had privately warned Donald Trump that the Pentagon munition stockpile is already dangerously low. Our ATACMS are low. From the HIMARS, even the offensive capabilities, the ATACMS, the HIMARS, those are depleted. The interceptors, all of our weapons, Trump just did to our military what he did to his casinos. And this is what our generals and admirals did also as they revolted against Trump. They know he's terrified of who? Well, Putin, but also Xi Jinping of China. So our admirals and generals made it clear, and this is true, but they made it very clear. They said, we don't have the capabilities anymore to in any way provide weapons or a security umbrella to Asia, and Xi Jinping can do whatever he wants at this point. Iran realized that, so what does Iran do? Iran, through their foreign ministry spokesperson, then puts out a message saying, our Chinese friends are using their efforts to prevent the escalation of the situation. We don't need any new mediators. Our friends in China share our concerns about escalation with the United States. It should also be noted as well that our admirals and generals leaked out that Saudi Arabia is desperately trying to cut a deal with the Houthis because the U.S. security umbrella doesn't work, and Saudi Arabia realizes that the U.S. is unable to protect it. United Arab Emirates, they were the last remaining Arab nation. And then you had Israel, who wanted the U.S. to escalate. So what happened last night? Dubai got a little visit from the Houthis, and the Jebel Ali port area happened to get hit by a few drones and was plumes of smoke. But in Dubai, they arrest you if you show the footage. And so you have these blackouts in the Arab nations about what's really going down. Now, what we also learned as well, and this was from a Reuters report. So you had the report from CNN. Early in the morning, you had the report from Reuters. U.S. Army depleted much of its long-range based missiles during Iran war, Reuters reports. Virtually all of its long-range precision missiles during Iran war are gone. So Reuters was virtually all. CNN was dangerously low, and this was all citing the top military generals and admirals who are going and just leaking the hell out of this. Also leaking, Gulf countries have all been concerned about the shortage of air defense systems impacting their ability to defend against Iranian retaliation. And you had Hegseth just freaking out about all of this as well. You see the chyron here from CNN sources. U.S. has had nearly 80% of key missile interceptors in Iran war. Or U.S. has used nearly 80% of key missile interceptors. Top commanders, that's what this video is about, warn stockpiles are dangerously low. Then Hegseth goes, that banner is not true, CNN. Shame on you. We don't hate the fake news media enough. Isn't that the biggest tell that what the story is accurate? We don't hate the fake news media enough. Remember, Hegseth was forced out of a nonprofit for military veterans because of his abhorrent conduct and his mismanagement. He couldn't run a smaller nonprofit for veterans, yet he's the guy put in charge of the Defense Department. He should never be near the Defense Department, yet alone lead it. So you've got the guy in the Oval who bankrupts all of his casinos and bankrupts most of his companies. You got the guy in the Defense Department who was pushed out of a nonprofit for veterans because of his mismanagement. And you've got our top commander saying, the bankrupter and the mismanager, and I could say a lot of other horrible things about Hegseth, but I'd be spending the whole video doing that. They bankrupted our military, and our generals and admirals and top commanders, let me tell you, are absolutely pissed right here. Now, Danny Citronitz, who is a top analyst in the Middle East, is actually from Israel, but he's been very critical of Israel's behavior and the United States behavior in all of this. He calls what Trump is doing, Trump surrendering and taking credit for the Iran-Oman deal that gives Iran control of the Strait of Hormuz, the necessary evil, he calls it. He says, if this is ultimately the agreement that emerges, it's probably the least bad option available to the Trump administration under current circumstances, especially given its clear desire to avoid another round of military escalations. The administration has gradually narrowed its own choices, leaving itself with few attractive options, and now to end the confrontation, the administration will be forced to lift the maritime blockade and restoring the sanctions waiver that allowed Iranian oil exports. The reality has shaped the negotiations from the beginning. With the necessary caution, the current trajectory appears to point more towards de-escalation than further escalation. As a result that will likely frustrate many in Israel, while reassuring most Gulf states whose top priority remains regional stability. From day one, it was clear that restoring the Strait of Hormuz to its pre-crisis status would have required either regime change in Iran or a sustained military effort to impose control over the waterway. Neither option was politically or strategically acceptable to Washington. Now, a senior Israeli official leaking to News 12 and 12 in Israel. Trump wants a deal at any cost. They say Trump is virtually begging Iran right now for a deal. I mean, these leaks are absolutely everywhere right now. And then I'll leave you with this one right here, which is perhaps most embarrassing of all. It says the following. This leaked out from our top generals and admirals. U.S. military asked troops for creative and unconventional ideas to punish Iran. CENTCOM sent an email to a broad group of military analysts last week saying, we are looking for new creative and unconventional ways to pressure and punish Iran because we need ideas, per CNN. A source close to CENTCOM says CENTCOM is looking at everything, acknowledging it needs to reevaluate its strategy. This was a crowdsourcing query, which military officials said was unusual over email, showing how desperate the Trump regime is. Oh, and don't get me started on Lieutenant General Leahy meeting with the Kuwait Armed Forces Chief of the General Staff, Lieutenant General Khalid al-Sharian. At the same time, the U.S. military has abandoned its bases in Kuwait, in Bahrain, in Qatar. Bye-bye, Al-Udeid. In Erbil, in all of these areas, the U.S. abandoned its bases, and our generals and admirals confirmed. The U.S. has moved out its equipment, has moved out its troops, has moved out its everything because the U.S. is unable to stop Iran from striking it. Just think about the utter retreat, and our generals have been very, very clear about what is happening. And again, what a humiliation ritual for the United States that Donald Trump has put us through. And look, I believe the most patriotic thing we can be doing as Americans right now is calling out how weak and pathetic Trump is. That's why it was good. It was a good thing to me that our generals and admirals were doing this and calling it out. Let me know what you think, please. Have you got your copy of WTF America, the book I wrote with my brothers? It comes out in October. It's called WTF America. We talk about how we get out of this hell. Pre-order it right now. Our book publisher says that it's really helpful to do the pre-orders. That has a lot of momentum, this book, so pre-order it now if you can. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate you. We're grateful for you. Hit subscribe, too. Let's try to get to 7 million subscribers. And thanks, everybody.
Breaking news right now, my brothers and I wrote a book. It's called WTF America. And well, doesn't that just say it all? It comes out officially this October, but you can pre-order your copy today. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description below.